All right, so let's see, it was just over a year ago. So Terri and Scott River Lodge have hosted many interns. It's an amazing retreat center they have there. I'm not going to share too much, so I don't want to take away what you're going to share. But it was just gorgeous. It is an amazing place. But one thing that really stuck out to me is the level of hospitality they had. They had a lot of young people, but not one grumpy face, not one person that you hear groaning in the background. You just saw everybody, and they were working hard. They were working really hard, but they had joy in their hearts. And when I knew Terri was able to make it, I was asking, it's like, is there any way you could share like not just the training, but what's behind it, what the heart is behind that, how they do probably better than almost any other facility I've seen. So thank you for the invite, and thank you for sharing.
Yes. All right, thank you, Ira. So I'm a little nervous. So I'm used to 20-year-olds everywhere. Bear with me a little bit here. So I'm Terri Parker. I'm Senior Managing Director at Scott Lodge. I was an executive chef there for 12 years. I've been there 19 years, ever since the JH Ranch organization purchased Scott Lodge. And so you guys may have, I think a lot of you guys met Chef Jacob. He was my sous chef for a number of years. He's come out here to do some training. And he also attended the conference. So this is my first time back at the conference in a number of years. So I'm excited to be here. I got to see something really cool last night I talked about. So I walked out where I'm staying, and there was 11 elk right there, like in the front yard. We kind of stalked them a little bit. It was the coolest thing to see them actually go to the ocean last night. Wow. So anyway, but just thought I'd throw that in. It was really cool. I did, between that and the rabbits, I don't know where I'm at exactly here. But anyway, so I'm going to talk a little bit today about hospitality. I want to introduce also, that's Lauren Jones. She is our extraordinarily guest service manager, lodge manager at Scott Lodge. She's been there since 2017, so she's out here assisting, and she's the person that actually really makes a lot of that guest service happen that I was speaking about. So we're going to talk about hospitality, and I'll tell you a little bit of my background as we kind of go along. I was didn't grow up with a lot of hospitality training, and I grew up in Homer, Alaska, and I was a deckhand since junior high on my dad's commercial fishing boat. So not a lot of training in that, but I went to school in Los Angeles from Homer and discovered I needed a job. And so I did a lot of my initial training at the Beverly Wilshire in Los Angeles, and also at the LA Convention Center. And I'll go way back, show you, I'm going to reveal my age a little bit here. The consulting chef at the time was Wolfgang Puck. So I started and kind of came up in the ranks. I did not ever think I would be a chef. And I went there studying math, but I had to make a living. And $40 a week from my dad wasn't cutting the bills even back then. And so, but I found out I loved the food service industry. And so just kind of went from there. Spent some time at Four Seasons, talk a little bit about that today. And eventually kind of settled in if you're familiar with Nordstrom, I actually went there. I will not lie, I was much younger when I first started there. I went there with a 40% discount, but I found that I really liked working there. And then I ended up at the JH Ranch Scott Lodge. And I thought I'd be there. I can't wait for 3 months. I don't know. I'm not sure if I could take a leave of absence 3 months. God was working in my life. I just didn't know it at the time. His timing was better than my timing. And I never left. And so I'm very biased. So when I'm talking to any about Scott Lodge, I'm going to be very biased. 2 things I'll ever talk about: fishing in Alaska and Scott Lodge. So anyway, happy to chat with anybody who'd like to talk about either one of those subjects. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So you can see kind of the premise here. I think we'll talk a little bit, caught, not taught. And I think hospitality speaks into that. And just a few of the premises up here, you can see this about the difference. We're talking about hospitality versus service. There's a little bit of difference in there. And I got 3 books here. These are kind of my guidebooks that I recommend for anyone starting out in your culinary career or just in business. As many know, who's Setting the Table with Danny Meyer. You're familiar with him. Back in my very early on career from 4 Seasons, Isadora Sharp. And then, of course, Unreasonable Hospitality. And student staff, I'm going to, like you guys, I brought a copy for each of you over there if you'd like to take one of these books, and highly recommend them. All right, so I guess the way I would start is, when you think about the best experience you've ever had, at a hotel, at a restaurant, in someone's house, and holiday dinner, vacation with family, just a special event. You may not remember every detail of that event, but I'm gonna guess you probably absolutely remember how it made you feel. And to me, that's the difference between service and hospitality. It's the details of the event, the service part of it, is that feeling part. I'll share a couple of examples of my experience, and I'm gonna ask you guys to think about a few of those for yourself also. Service is what we do. It is the task, it's the execution of those tasks. Hospitality is how we make people seen, valued, and heard in our service. So we're going to talk a little bit about these guys here. So next one. Okay. Hospitality Defined. So let me tell you a little bit about them. Will Giardia, if I'm saying that correctly, he wrote Unreasonable Hospitality. That's the book we're talking about today. He is known for creating just extraordinary experiences for his guests, just like way ahead of them on anticipating what their needs are. He, at one point, ran 11 Madison Park, which was rated the #1 restaurant in the world. He has a very humble beginning. Then Danny Meyer, we talk about Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer is the founder of the Union Square Hospitality Group, Gramercy Tavern, if you've ever heard of that. You're going to see a little bit of the video here. Look at the beautiful pictures. They filmed this inside Gramercy Tavern. And he believes that hospitality starts with caring for your team, right there in the back of the house, the front of the house. Their focus is on culture and leadership, mentoring through leadership. He's also, what I really found is, if you read his book, Setting the Table, he had these aspirations at Gramercy, but his real dream, he's the founder of Shake Shack. That's all he really wanted to do, was bring a hamburger milkshake that would be successful in inner city, in New York. So Danny Meyer, that book's a real good starting point. Isadora Sharp, The Golden Rule of Hospitality. Treat others as you want to be treated. It's really kind of that simple. But the one thing that they all have in common is hospitality. You can't teach it. You have to model it. You have to catch that. You have to desire to experience that hospitality. And then I'm going to throw one more in there. Our founder, Bruce Johnston. So if you come to JH Ranch, this is our mother property, start the lodge. We have, it really is true. It took me a few years to kind of catch on to this and say, oh boy, it is, the answer is yes. Now what's your question? That is what we teach, and that is what we model in the JH organization. And it ties in really well with these other folks here. Next one. So I'm going to have you guys watch this video. It's a little short video, and it's about 5.5 minutes long, but it kind of gets to the core of the unreasonable hospitality, setting the table, going the extra mile, the caught not taught. And he'll talk a little about this. This is Danny Meyer. This is the Union Square founder, and he's also the Shake Shack man. So you guys, you're all familiar with Shake Shack, right? Okay, good. All right, go ahead and start that.
I think that people who think that hospitality is just for restaurants are completely missing the boat. I think hospitality is probably the single most powerful business strategy that doesn't get taught nearly enough in business school. What we've learned in our business is to understand that service and hospitality are completely different topics. Hospitality is a dialogue. If you feel like I'm on your side, hospitality is present. If you think I did something for you, hospitality is present. If you think I'm customizing an experience for you, hospitality is present. We believe that the way you make people feel is what they remember more than anything. If you're going to provide the most powerful, sustainably lasting hospitality experience, believe it or not, we've learned you have to put your customers second. And that's not something I was ever taught growing up. I was always taught customers always first, the customer's always right. What we've learned is the best way to make the most customers happy is to make sure that the people who come to work in your organization are having a great experience coming to work. I think customers are expert at reading, is your staff focused on their work and are they having fun with each other? And if those two things are present, I can almost guarantee you have a great customer experience. What we've been able to do in terms of hiring employees is to hire people 49% for their technical skills. You can be the best cook in the world or the best sommelier in the world, and we don't want you on this team unless you have the 51% emotional skills that lead to somebody who's got what we call a high hospitality quotient, a high HQ. And the 51% skills generally add up to somebody whose greatest pleasure in the world, having nothing to do with how good they are at their job, but whose natural wiring says it matters to me to make people feel better. And we've been able to identify what those 6 emotional skills are that are always present in somebody who's a 51%. Kindness, optimism, work ethic, curious intelligence, empathy, self-awareness, and integrity. We have an expression around here which is always be collecting dots so you can always be connecting dots. There's absolutely no excuse not to know who you're talking to and not to know what's important to that person. And in order to do that, I've got to be collecting dots. We have search engines, we have databases, we have all kinds of opportunities to know who's here, who are they dining with, when did they last eat here, what did they order, what were we talking about, and we keep notes on all of that stuff. And then we put those connections to use for people that make them feel that this is a customized experience just for them. Gramercy Tavern is 21 years old and remains New York's #1 favorite restaurant in the CCI survey. We're really proud of that. I think that when someone says that you are their favorite version of anything, they're paying you the absolute highest compliment they can pay you. No one said Gramercy Tavern is the best restaurant. No one said Lexus is the best car. We'd like to think we are, and you'd like to think you are. But if somebody says, this is my favorite, that's inarguable. Nobody can say, no, it's not your favorite. And if I say Lexus is my favorite car, it wouldn't be my favorite if it also didn't provide an emotional connection that made me feel awesome. We have competitors out there who actually have higher food scores than we have. And we have a higher favorite rating. We have competitors who have even a higher service score. You know, their waiters wear tuxedos and they do a beautiful job of saucing the fish next to your table, etc. And we have a higher favorite score. So this is not an excuse not to constantly work on our performance. But I think the sum of our performance plus the hospitality experience leads people to say, there's just nowhere I'd rather do business. We're in a day and age with the internet where every good new idea we have, if it's truly a good idea, gets copied. And the shelf life of innovation is, it's probably about 5 seconds today. Nobody can take out their smartphone and take a picture of an act of hospitality. They can't take a picture of how you made my heart feel. And so, yes, we're going to keep innovating. Yes, we're going to keep performing at our maximum capacity. But we're going to go to town on stuff that you cannot copy from us. I tell our team here all the time, you think you're in the restaurant business? Forget about it. This is just a box. It's a hospitality box. That's the advice I would give any business is put it out of your mind that you're selling a car. You're selling happiness and you're selling emotional comfort. And if you can understand who I am, what my sign says when I walk in, where else am I going to
Next. All right, so this kind of sums it all up in 5 minutes, and I love that little video there. So I like interaction, I like discussion. So I have a few questions I want to ask you today. So if we shout them on out, what do you think about the best restaurant experience you've had? And what made it memorable? Best experience. Yes.
So I would say Royal Caribbean Cruise
Mhm.
with my family to Puerto Vallarta, Mazatlan, and Cabo. What made it memorable was just the beauty,
Mhm.
the ice sculptures. You just felt like Rose.
Yeah. The extra touches, details matter. Details matter. What else?
Went to, let's see, oh, right after we went to your place, we went to visit a friend in the Napa area, and I went to culinary school with him. He was pretty proud, just got his first Michelin star at his restaurant, and he invited us to dine, and it's a tasting menu that they had, and they didn't give us a menu. They just started bringing things out, and it was just and just his skill is just unlike any other. But the food was great. But one thing that really stuck out to me, and I was talking to the maitre d' afterwards, like I was so impressed. Like there's like 13 courses, and I'd ask the person just bringing the food, not even the lead waiter, the person bringing the food, oh, do you know what this is? They would know in intricate detail what that was, like intricate detail. And asked multiple questions through the whole thing. And there was only one, there was a tweel, and it was red. And I asked, oh, do you know what the red is? And it's like, I don't know, but I'll find out. And they did. And I was complimenting to the maitre d' afterwards, like, that was amazing. Went through the whole thing, and there was only one thing. And she was like, I'm so sorry, that's they're testing that for a new menu, and the waiters haven't been trained on it yet. But it was just so impressive, just like how they were able to passionately share about everything, not an ingredient list, but
Yeah.
such detail.
Yeah, attention to detail. Anyone else?
Well, a coffee shop's not really a restaurant, but it sticks in my mind and helping me to understand hospitality a little bit more and to extend it. But here at CB, first time I went in there, they said my name. The second time I went in there, they said my name, and every time after. So they had this knack of just remembering people, which helped me to understand that everybody wants to be seen, heard, and when you're at church or anywhere you go, you give that eye contact, and even if you can't remember their name, you say, "I'll meet you again next Sunday," and it means the world to people.
Right. It's true. It's absolutely right. All right, Mark, nice. So you notice the answers were about that feeling. It's just these small details. Nothing that's on a checklist, nothing that's part of the training manual. It's just taking that extra care. All right. So talk a little bit the difference between service and hospitality. Service is technical. And when I say technical, it's, am I delivering the meal correctly? Is the meal hot? Is the plate white? Am I going to the right table with that meal? That is the service part. The hospitality is the emotional part, where you might ask someone how their day was with authenticity. You know, how was your day today? Remembering someone's name, that's a huge deal, remembering someone's name. Service delivers the product. What I mean by that is, if someone checks in like at the lodge, we want to make sure they are coming into a clean room, a well-stocked room. Just all the extra little details. The flowers are fresh. Hospitality is something like, well, we ask one of the things we ask our guests, fill out, and it's all couples, as far as knowledge, and anniversaries, birthdays, handwritten notes from the staff, that chocolate, extra chocolate on the pillow, turned down. We have one lady who just loved Diet Coke. I'm a Diet Pepsi fan, so I can speak to diet sodas. And one of our staff noticed within the first day of them arriving, they come 6 days, they stay with us, that she really enjoyed ice, getting some fresh ice, and a Diet Pepsi. And one of the things the staff member took it upon themselves was to stock the mini fridge without being asked, a diet soda, and then always a fresh amount of ice each day. So it's little bitty details. And I can tell you when she left on her guest survey card, she talked about her beautiful views and all of those things, but in the comment section, I can't believe they stocked up my fridge with the Diet Coke, et cetera, et cetera. So little details again matter. So that's a little bit of the difference. Technical is service, delivering the product, hospitality is the emotional and the experience. Next one. So when I say hospitality is caught, not taught, it is, I think as kids, I don't know if you guys have ever read that book, Everything I Learned in Life, I Learned in Kindergarten, that book. And you're taught these things, you see, and it's mentored by your family, your teachers, your friends. And I'll tell you a few stories. So in the Unreasonable Hospitality book, when they first started out, Will Giardia, and he's talking about 11 Madison, which eventually became one of the #1 restaurant rated in the world. He talks about when they first opened, they started noticing, this is in downtown New York. They started noticing that about halfway through the meal, some people, they get up, they leave the restaurant, run down the road, and they'd come back in a few minutes. And it's like, what the world's going on here? It seemed to be kind of a pattern. So the maitre d' at the time, he talks about this in his book, inquired with one of the guests. And they're a special kind of occasion restaurant. We go on anniversaries, maybe an engagement, wedding proposal, special events. So the maitre d' went up to one of the guests and said, why were you leaving? He says, well, I don't want to get my car ticketed or a boot on my tire. My meter's going to run out. So what they did, the maitre d' took it on himself to get a couple rolls of quarters at the check, right at the when the guests came in. And on their own, they would go down and feed the meters for folks. It became one of their first greatest reviews in the New York Times. Is that, nothing they advertised, but they took that extra step. And when he talks about unreasonable hospitality, that's one of the things he's talking about. It's giving an experience that nobody really expects. You're going above that expectation. It's like I said, what I said a few minutes ago, it's not on a checklist, it's not part of the manual. But then we talk about unreasonable hospitality, that's a little bit what we're talking about. People learn through observation. I just want to stay there just for a moment. And leaders, you model that. And I know early on in my career, the back of the house versus the front of the house. And one of the things that I needed to work on early on in my career was we were modeling hospitality in the back of the house. So I think sometimes some of us chefs may think that, we're kind of shielded from that front of the house world out there. But I found over my career that I was modeling that to my expediters. I was modeling that, I had to have that same level of hospitality in the back of the house. Teams will imitate what they see and what they hear. What we say matters. At the lodge, we talk a lot about it's 25% what I say, it's 75% what I do. So, go on next, please. So let's talk a little bit about Four Seasons and Isadora Sharp. Like I said, it's pretty simple. This is on their manual. Treat others the way you wish to be treated. It all comes down to that. And I'll give you another example. There's multiple stories, especially from Four Seasons. And I learned more in Four Seasons in my short time than I learned anywhere else. Just about the care of the guest and taking those extra steps. There's a famous story. There's a couple pretty famous stories about Four Seasons. And there's one that I won't tell because I'm still wondering if that's the case. But One of the things they do is empower the staff there at Four Seasons. So here's an example, the cot party. So there's a family that comes to stay at the hotel one night. And they have 2 small children, and their children every night want warm milk. That's just how they get the kids to calm down and go to sleep. And so the staff brings that. Well, the second night they're there, not without effort, they didn't ask, but staff communicated to other staff. They saw the manager take care of them. They just showed up with the warm milk. Third night comes along. Same thing is modeled with the staff. This going the extra mile, but this time it showed up with warm cookies. That family wrote an amazing review. It caught fire, and it just became one of the standards of the Four Seasons. It became when I was there, one of the training stories. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about catching. You just need to catch this. And I'll give you another one, very simple. When we're working in hospitality, for those of you who've worked in dining rooms, you're paying attention to body language. You're paying attention to those unspoken needs of guests. And one of them is that we train the expediters, or the people out in our dining area when our guests are dining. You're watching around for body cues. We never want anybody to have to do this, right? We never want to have to do this. And one of the things I remember from Four Seasons in our training models, and even at Nordstrom when I was there, we call it the towel story, that a young man who was very new and kind of hit that 51% that Danny Miner was talking about. And he noticed people, before they started getting out of the pools, he could tell someone's getting ready to get out of the pool, right? And they'd get out of the pool and he'd be there with the towel. And that is what I'm talking about. You're just paying attention. You're paying attention to these small details. But that is how that made guests feel. I never had to do this. I never had to ask. Your anticipation. You're anticipating this. Lauren? Back to Will Guardi and the unreasonable hospitality. Give people more than they expect. More than they expect. Little thoughtful gestures. Personalized moments. So the company I work for is based out of Birmingham, Alabama, the capital of sweet tea. And we get a lot of Southerners come to Scholar Lodge. I would say the South comes to us every year. And so I remember a guy's name's Trevor. I'll never forget his name's Trevor. He's the sweetest guy in the world. He's from Mobile, Alabama. And he was just the friendliest guy, but he had to have sweet tea. Like I have to have coffee or water. This guy had to have sweet tea. And so we noticed that one of the girls took it upon herself, and we have a little expediter area, the Nook. She's in there boiling water, trying to make this very, very sweet tea. And chef noticed, what's going on. Well, what we did, just from that simple gesture, and Bill Trick Trevor still talks about this sweet tea. Every day, we made sweet tea every morning. We put it in there, grab and go. We had it ready for Trevor. And those are the little things that just made a huge difference. He loved his experience, and his wife had a great time, but that was the thing that he remembered. Remembered that. So these little bitty tiny gestures. All right. Next one. All right. So I want to talk about kitchens. Let's talk about kitchens. And I mentioned a minute ago about back of the house, front of the house. Chefs shape the kitchen culture. And the kitchen goes out to the front of the house, even though sometimes in my early career as a chef, I didn't necessarily want to believe that, but it does go out the front of the house. Food carries emotion and memory. Every plate communicates care. And it really does begin in the kitchen. Hospitality really does begin in the kitchen. So I'll tell you a couple of examples that I would say of that. We're in the age of dietary restrictions, all right? And what we challenge ourselves in our kitchen is to not only master those dietary restrictions, but I tell my kitchen staff and chefs, I know I told Chef Jacob a lot, fool me. Fool me. You know, give me something that I don't know that's vegan or I don't know that's gluten-free. You need to fool me. Taking that extra care for somebody who maybe has celiac or has dietary restrictions that just impact them medically, or for whatever reason that is. I cannot tell you the impact that makes on them, the appreciation that comes from them. That is part of hospitality. I said hospitality begins in the back of the house. That's one example of what I'm talking about. And it's part of the creativity. So we challenge our chefs in creativity, education, excellence, and once again, fool me. Fool them. I've had people we've given stuff to, we make a really good gluten-free roll that actually will come back to the kitchen. Are you sure? Are you sure? Yes, for sure. But that to me is going the next step in the kitchen to that hospitality experience for all the guests. I'll tell you a story. I was probably about 10 years old. I remember my first great steak to this day I ever had. My grandmother had come down from Alaska and she gave us a little culture, me and my sibling, my younger brother. And we were out having a steak. And I remember sat down, they bring the steak. And I asked the waiter, I said, can I get a steak knife? And I remember he said, if you need a steak knife, I need to get you another steak. Okay? It's a true story. I didn't dare ask for ketchup with my steak, but.
Or salt, yeah.
Didn't dare do that. But I remember that. And even beyond that, so my grandmother's Jewish. And Leviticus Jewish, very kosher. And I remember her talking to the waiter, just verifying it was kosher. And I remember the care the waiter gave her. It wasn't an inconvenience. He actually went back in the kitchen and asked a question, came back out. But I also remember that at the end of the meal, the chef came out. I was like maybe 10 years old when it happened. And just, how was your meal? Talking about the kosher, just kind of easing her concerns. I never forgot that meal. And so when I talk about hospitality beginning in the back of the house, in the kitchen, those are just a couple of examples of what I'm talking about, the extra care. I read his story of the maitre d' and a tool, the person taking the time and the extra care on that. Or, so, here's a question for you guys. I'm a lot spent in kitchens for a number of years. When you walk into a kitchen for the first time, how long does it take you to sense the culture of that kitchen?
30 seconds.
There you go. That's about right. Anyone else? Before you hit the door almost? Seems like that way, yeah. It's kind of hard for us to give the guest an experience if we're not experiencing ourselves. Hospitality begins with us, amongst each other. I think of the lodge, I think of the Cabby here, I think, these are our brothers and sisters in Christ. And we're sharing that hospitality with them, but I think we take that to the next step. Our guests kind of starts there. And I think we've all maybe, if you've been around long enough, you've experienced some kitchen. And kitchens are interesting. They're very interesting. So, same thing with the guests we talked about. If the guests feel seen, heard, and known, how important it is. I think it also applies to our team as chefs. It's our team. Do they feel known, valued, and cared for? If they do, they're going to create that experience also for our guests. Remember what Danny Meyer said about that HQ? HQ. I think sometimes as a chef, maybe got a little bit away from that at times. It's kindness, optimism. We talk about solution seekers at the lodge, just like in the first paragraph of our Welcome to Scotland Lodge. We're looking for a staff that's creative, integrity. We want solution seekers. Come up with an idea. Work ethic, curious intelligence, empathy, self-awareness, and integrity. The HQ part. And I think that if we try and model that, in my experience, when I work hard to do that, and our teams work hard to do that, I think that culture they're going to experience when they come through the door is not a scary culture. I'm going to say good hospitality is something, well, I'll put it this way. Bad hospitality, sometimes we equate something that happened to you. Good hospitality is something that happened for you. So when our teams walk into that kitchen, into the back of the house, chefs, they're experiencing that. They feel that hospitality inside the kitchen, 5 seconds after they're through the door. Next one. So let me ask this question. 5 seconds. What is that vibe you sense sometimes when that before and to you? Anybody? You say you walk into that kitchen. Students, when you walk into the kitchen early in the morning to work, what does it kind of tell you to get the vibe of the kitchen for the day?
Just, there's an atmosphere that you
Right.
can tell of respect between people. Some kitchens are very quiet, and you can sense it, and some kitchens are louder and they're laughing or they're picking on you. When you're picking on somebody and you laugh back, I think that's indicative of respect.
Yeah.
But it depends. The cultures are different. But you can. It's palatable.
How do you kind of work through that? How do you maybe individually lift that up? I found for myself, sometimes it's not always easy to have a good sense of humor. What do you guys, what do you do to kind of lift up that vibe? Yes, sir.
Be the first person to make the coffee in the morning.
There you go. Great way to start. We are in the Pacific Northwest. Coffee is critical. So it's the equivalent of sweet tea in the South. So, all right.
I think part of it's being real with people. So if you came in and you just have had a rough day, well, just, hey, be honest. And it's like, hey, it's not about you. I've had a rough day, but I'm here to come together as a team. And I thank you for coming alongside me in that. It brings people alongside you rather than, oh, somebody's in a bad mood today.
Right.
And
How to be supportive, so just step in. That's sometimes, I think we've all been in a kitchen where, a little bit under fire. We're almost on fire in the kitchen. And when someone comes in and supports, it's like sometimes you don't even have to ask. I think that's one way to change the culture in the kitchen very quickly, when you realize you're in a supportive environment. Right. Empowered teams create magic, if you want to call it that. Where we encourage initiative, we trust the employees, we empower them to make decisions, and we support those decisions. So I would say, I think that one of the things I learned at Nordstrom, so one of the things I had to do in that job, I was a corporate chef, 2 days a month, 1 to 2 days a month, I had to actually work inside the store, kind of keeping it real. And one of the things they did really well was they empowered staff to make decisions. It started with hiring the right people. It started with excellent training. That was the next step in that. And then supporting those decisions. There may have been opportunities to maybe refine some things, but it was the staff knowing also they were empowered to make those decisions. If you've ever been there, if you say you want to return something, it's one of those places where they're not going to call 5 people for you to return something. A staff member is empowered to make those decisions. And I'll tell you where I saw unreasonable hospitality. I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Daryl Jefferson, and I remember Daryl. And he was a phenomenal customer of the Washington Square Market team in Portland. And Daryl had been sick for a while. And I remember his personal shoppers took it upon himself, said, told Daryl's wife, if you'll bring in his suits, we're going to alter those. Because he'd lost quite a bit of weight. And I remember the impact that had on his family, his church. Members of his church came, the community around that, and how encouraging that was for the staff there, that they were empowered to make that decision to just change that memorable feeling, how it makes you feel, to a wide swath of people. So that's just an example of what we're talking about. Train well, hire well, and empower folks. One of the things we ask at Scott Lodge, and this is the one I think some of the staff kind of dread a little bit, one of the things that we ask of our team before a guest ever comes to, we do a thing called greet team. So the guests fly in, they come down the driveway, our valet team is there, the greet teams to meet them. And before the guest ever gets out of the car, they'll walk up, the guys, Lauren leads that team, welcome Mr. and Mrs. Smith before they ever get out of the car. Know them by sight. And so some of our staff is a little afraid of that, because they know that's a requirement. It's not one of those not optional things, you gotta know that. We all have to know by sight the names of our guests. That's an all Four Seasons things too, much bigger scale than us, but knowing they're our guests, collecting the dots, as Danny Meyer's speaking of. And so one of our girls, her name's Carly, she took it upon herself, and we do an app at Scott Lodge, Slack, you guys familiar with Slack? That's our communication app at Scott Lodge. So every day before, the day before our guest came, she made a slideshow on Slack, kind of like a flip card you do, who's this, for our team so they would know. And I remember some of the young men, Caden and a few other guys, they got so good at it. They knew the names, they knew where they were from, and they knew everything about these folks before they ever came. But I cannot tell you the difference that made with those guests. It's amazing. And so we get to these things, we get to these cards, guest survey cards at the end of the session. And so this was funny though, we asked about food, we asked about air conditioning, we asked about maintenance, the things you probably normally see in guest survey cards. And there's that little section in the back, comments. And I don't think there's a guest that doesn't say, I can't believe you knew our names before we ever got here, before we ever walked through the door. That drops so many barriers that they are already, before they even come in and just shown to the room, they feel seen, heard, and valued as guests before they ever come through the front door. So those little things make a huge difference. And one employee taking it upon herself to make it easier for some of our team members to struggle, that is going the extra mile. That's a little bit what we're talking about, that cop part. All right, next, please, one. So these are just 3 leadership questions that I ask myself often in my role as director of Scott Lodge. And that I just say as you go through your career, students, I say continually be asking yourself this, just whether it's in culinary, whether it's in whatever career you take on, whatever leadership role, in your personal life. What does the guest need right now? That's one of the things I'm asking all the time as I'm looking around as we're going to our next event at the lodge. You know, that is the awareness part. That is the anticipation part. Say a couple is checked in really late, they're really tired. You know, we might skip the process, the formal process. We might encourage them not to come to the opening night's orientation. You know, maybe the walkthrough's a lot quicker than what we anticipated. So that is the anticipation, that is the awareness part. How can we exceed expectations? That's one of the other questions we're continually asking ourselves. We learn it's their anniversary. You know, maybe it's their 25th anniversary, special anniversary for them. We deliver notes, we have flowers in their rooms. We have a guest who mentions they really love coffee. They wake up really early. So we're making sure that we're prepared for them early in the morning. We're letting them know, you know, we have you set up if you beat us to the lodge in the morning. So just taking those little extra steps and how we care for our team. And one of the things I know, I'll speak to the kitchen component of this, and this was early on in my career, one of the things I valued the most was like, if I was really busy, if I was struggling, having a manager jump in, not just supervise, but support the team. And even my coworkers, maybe it was the sous chef, or it was my line cook that was working with me, having them join in with me on that. That is how we showed hospitality inside the kitchen. With guests, we anticipate their needs. We create experiences for our guests. And with the team, we show deep, honest, authentic caring of the team and support of them. Next one. Okay. When you lead a kitchen someday, students, chefs, when you lead a kitchen someday, what culture do you want people to feel as you're leading? What kind of kitchen, what is that vibe you want to have in your kitchen?
Respect.
Respect, number 1. Yeah. Anything else?
Supportive, encouraging.
That's right. Mhm.
Safe.
Yes. Kitchen that works with a culture of integrity. We care. We always give it our best. We go the extra mile. How can we exceed? We will always want to be jumping over the bar, not just moving the bar. So I'll tell you. So I told you about my experience with the steak, my grandmother. I ended up in steak knife and knowing enough not to ask for ketchup. My first great restaurant experience. So when I decided to become a chef, I was going to be a math teacher. That didn't work out so well for me. I learned a lot of my cooking skills from a guy named Jimmy Connor. Not Jimmy Connor, the tennis person. But us older ones in here, there's another Jimmy Connor, the tennis guy. Great, phenomenal tennis player. Just not the nicest guy in the world, all right? He ruffled a lot of feathers. Well, I worked for a chef also named Jimmy Connor with a K, not a C. And I'll tell you what, that guy was an amazing chef. I learned a lot. But I learned about the kind of chef I didn't want to be from him. It was an extremely toxic environment, and I needed to learn quick because it wasn't going to work out so well over the long haul. And I think looking back, when I decided to become a chef, when I decided to go into hospitality, those two experiences kind of defined what kind of chef and what kind of environment I wanted to have, what hospitality would look like to me. When I decided to accept the position at Nordstrom, it's the reason I picked Nordstrom, besides the 40% discount, which I kid about. I picked it based on the culture I saw there with the staff. The culture I saw with the leadership model, reading about them, learning about them, and just, doing a little investigating on my own. And so, the toxic environment, and then the experience I first experienced. I never forgot how I felt in my very, very first experience. Kind of going back. I also never forgot how I felt working for Jimmy Connor. So, anyway, most importantly, I say it's model, model, model. So, what guests remember? All true. Kindness, warmth, connection, feeling welcome, the things we've been talking about. And I told you guys about those guest survey cards. I'm gonna look at that comment. Two things I've got maintenance first. A couple things that often are called out. So we do this thing the last day. I'll tell you what, the last day of our guest experience. We have a very large volunteer staff. We're not a big group, there's maybe 30 total, but we have about 15 that are volunteers. They're coming out to serve the Lord and serve our guests. And so we do a thing on the last day, it's called payday. We go up to our meeting barn with all our guests. We have worship with them. We worship with them 3 days a week. We go up there, and the guests talk about their experience. And they get to hear the guests directly say the impact it had on their marriages. Because our mission statement is we're transforming communities one family at a time. And they get to hear about how their marriage was impacted, which impacts their children, which impacts their grandchildren. And little things they call out. One of the things I can tell you a few of them. No one knows names, always gets called out. I can't believe they knew my name. I can't believe when I walked by the guys mowing the lawn, they turned off their lawnmower, turned and looked at me and said, good morning, your mother. Big deal. My team man, Trevor. A Diet Pepsi, or Diet Coke, excuse me, not Pepsi first, a Diet Coke lady. You remembered our anniversary. You remembered our anniversary. And your staff, as Ira said, they seem like a happy bunch. You ever been somewhere and someone says, can I help you? And you know they don't, the world don't want to be helping you at all. The authenticity part. We just want to be present as a staff. Sometimes we just don't understand what people are going through. We don't understand. And these small details and genuine hospitality and care and what we talked about being seen and heard. I was going to bring this up, but I'll bring up I'll never forget in the rest of my life, this couple named the Bruckners. And I remember they came in, I thought, boy, they don't want to be here. They just didn't want to be here. And that happens when somebody sends a couple, I thought they need to be at the lodge. And I kind of saw the softening as we went along throughout the session. And I remember, I think Maura remembers this couple, we don't always understand what guests are going through, people are going through. So we don't want to be the distraction. We want to be that, we're reflecting the walk of Jesus. And what we soon discovered is they just recently lost a child. But at the end of the week, the people who didn't want to be there, we couldn't hardly get them to leave. They needed a staff that was attentive. They needed a staff that knew to just be present if they needed something. And those little details just made a huge difference in their walk. I saw the father come through with the other child the next season for a river breakfast. And it was just the authenticity, the optimism, the smiles of the staff that made a huge difference. Because we didn't understand. I just thought, these people don't want to be here. So those things, how it made them feel. Go back to how it made them feel. Next one. So kind of final thoughts. I guess probably all heard this. It really is true. People are going to forget what you say. Forget what you did. But they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think for myself, and I hope for all of us, that we've experienced that. And it goes back to the thing of hospitality. So that's really all I have. Anybody have any questions or comments?
So you shared with your staff that you expect them to remember the names. How do you share that expectation? Is it just like in the
Day one orientation,
okay.
And then some of them who've had sisters or brothers or other friends come through, they already know what's coming before they ever hit the door. It's taking the extra care. That we're going to take the time to do. This is part of our hospitality. We're going to take the time to get to know the guest. We're going to take the time. You may be from my hometown, maybe from Gadsden, Alabama. Just those little details. And I'll tell you what, it just drops a lot of barriers because all of our couples that come through, they may be celebrating their 30th anniversary. But some of our couples coming through, they're struggling. There may be things going on inside their family or marriages. And our job is to create an undistracted environment for them. You don't have to worry about your food. You don't have to worry about your room. You don't have to, none of that. We're going to take care of all of that. And what we do at Scarborough Lodge and Jay's Ranch, we have our core values. Number 3 in our core values is fun first. And because what we've discovered is we don't know sometimes what folks are going through. We just create an undistracted, fun environment because I believe, and I've seen this in my 19 years there, that just opens up so much for the guests. I'll tell you, I took this one couple, they've been married 30-some years. So, and we like ride Can-Ams up, 2,500 feet, 7,500 feet, dusty, dirty Forest Service roads. And I had this one couple, and said, okay, I'll take them up. I love riding up the Can-Ams, so it wasn't a hard ask. And I remember they showed up looking like they were going skiing in Vail, Colorado, with white outfits. The whole thing. Oh no, this is going to be so bad. So bad. And take them up, I'm leaving, I see them coming, and they're brown. There's no more white outfits, none of that stuff. I thought, this is going to be so bad when they get to me. So bad. And I remember they came up, and they were laughing, and they said, we have not had this much fun since we dated. Maybe like 30-some years. So the fun first thing, it's those little bitty things. And what we saw, we didn't know that they were really struggling in their marriage. And what that does, those small acts of hospitality, those events, that fun first, it just opened up for them to receive what God had for them when they came there, to pour into them as a couple. And they left encouraged. They left, new perspective after 30-some years of marriage. Okay, we're honeymooning again. So it's those little bitty acts of hospitality. Yes. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for sharing.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is just beautiful seeing how it starts with us setting that example, and we appreciate you. All right, well, let's see, so it is 3 o'clock, so shortly, about 15 minutes downstairs, Chef Jim is leading a session on pastry cream, and then right after that will be the liquid nitrogen. So learn how to make instant ice cream and some other items. So yeah, that'll be right in the dining room. Thank you, Terri.